thank you again for joining us this morning. My name is Mackenzie. I'm a final year medical engineering student here at QUT. I'm helping out today to facilitate the webinar. I'll do a bit of an introduction for Associate Professor Grant, and then we'll get to hear lots more about the exciting work that he does. Also, keep in the back of your mind that at the end of his presentation, you get a really awesome opportunity to ask questions about his research, what the future of technology and conservation might look like. So really awesome opportunity to pick the brains of an expert. But yes, before we kick off, I would like to do an acknowledgement of, let's see if the slide works. Yes, so acknowledgement of the traditional owners where QUT now stands. So QUT acknowledges the First Nations owners of the land from which we are joining this event today. We pay respects to their elders, laws, customs, and creation spirits. QUT acknowledges the important role that our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people play within the higher education community. QUT acknowledges the Turrbal and Yagara as the First Nations owners of the land where QUT now stands. There we go. So yes, so today we're going to be hearing about aerial survey of animals using drones. So a bit more of an introduction for Associate Professor Grant Hamilton. He's part of the Faculty of Science here at QUT in ecology, and he'll be sharing insight into his research area of technology advancements in conservation methods for Australian species. So yeah, such as using artificial intelligence and drones. So Associate Professor Peter Grant is involved in a variety of projects in this space, such as detection of koalas, which we're going to hear more about today. I'm very excited. And also detection of feral species and weeds, and also improving surveillance for wildlife and pests. So yeah, definitely use up that really awesome opportunity at the end of his presentation to ask some really cool questions. But yes, now passing over to you, Grant. I will just give you remote control of the presentation.
Okay, thanks.
And that should be there now. Awesome.
Alrighty, thanks very much. Great to have everybody here. Thank you so much for coming along. So the title of the presentation is Aerial Survey of Animals Using Drones. And I guess in a way it's because drones seem pretty cool. Probably a better, if it actually works. A better title for this might be the automated detection of animals using machine learning. Because the real power of these kinds of techniques come from how you process data. It's not just about the platform. So this is some stuff that we got up on Bribie Island, and at the time we were looking at spots on trees. We were looking at the leaves. And what we discovered at the time was that, you know, it's a pretty cool thing to be able to fly with a drone, but it gives you a perspective. It gives you data from a particular perspective. But again, you still need some way to be able to look at that data. And the thing is with modern technologies, whether it's using drones or camera traps, which we use as well, there's a lot of data. So unless you find some good ways to deal with it, you need a human sitting in front of a computer screen, clicking through a lot of images. And that's not only tedious, it actually ends up, because humans get tired and we have visual processing systems that will work for a while and not particularly well after a while, it also tends to get a bit biased. So we needed to come up with a better way to be able to do things. Why bother? You know, what's the purpose of all this, I guess? What I'm passionate about is conservation. And why? Well, basically because we've done a fantastic job of stuffing the planet up. We can do some numbers. I mean, we all know this is true, right? But we can look at some numbers. 26,500 species are threatened globally. 26,500, and they're the ones we know about. That's the thing, you know. In all likelihood, species are getting destroyed that we haven't even discovered yet. So if we keep on doing what we're doing, and that's the collective we of humanity, we are going to have another mass extinction in the same way that previously it happened with an asteroid hitting the Earth. We're the asteroid. We're the ones who are devastating things. So if you want to be a little bit more parochial, if you want to just think about Australia, there are 310 native Australian animal species that are threatened, and over 1,000 plant species. So the Intergovernmental Science Policy Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services is one of the well-recognised international forums for collating information. And what they've said in a recent report, 2019, is that nature is declining globally at rates unprecedented in human history. There are times before humans when this happened, like I said, when a big rock hit the Earth. But we're making things happen in the same way. We're absolutely devastating things. And the worst thing is that the rate of species extinction is accelerating. So whilst I think species have an intrinsic right to survive anyway, there's also some things to think about in terms of humans. If we wipe everything out, we're not going to be far behind it in all likelihood, because we need those species to survive. There is hope. Biodiversity is declining fast, but we still have the means to ensure a sustainable future for people and the planet. And it really is important to recognise that we can do things. We have to do things pretty urgently, but we can do things. Australia is really good at sport, and apparently we're also really good at driving animals to extinction. The decline in biodiversity in Australia is amongst the worst in the world. So we contribute between 5% and 10% of global loss just within Australia. So we're a fantastically biodiverse continent, but we're also doing some really bad things. So what do we do about it? That's the question, right? So we know that the state of play at the moment is pretty dire. And so how do we deal with these things? So there is a way that we can think about this, that to assess extinction risk, we can think about what is threatening these species. So we identify the threatening processes and we implement management action. Now that takes political will, and it also takes motivation on the part of the public. And, you know, people like you who are going to vote, who have the capacity to choose what goods and services you buy, that has real impacts. An important part of this, though, is we have to monitor outcomes. It's not enough just to say we're going to do something. We actually have to find out if what we do is effective. Because if we're spending money on things that aren't effective, it's useless. We should be finding better ways to do things. And a problem has always been that monitoring those kinds of outcomes is really pretty hard. And that's because animals can often be difficult to see. That's the way they evolved. It can be hard, and it can also be expensive. Often what we've relied on is humans going out and looking for things. And I want to talk for a little while about koalas as a species. And we call these kinds of species a flagship species, one that we use to perhaps protect an entire area for whatever reason. You know, it can be in some cases because they have such a huge impact. In the case of koalas, it's because they're so damn cute and everybody loves them. Despite the fact that they're so cute and everybody loves them, there's a very real possibility of extinction. in particular places. And even in southeast Queensland, there are areas down here where we've had an 80% loss in koalas, and that's just in the past 20 years, 80%. And there are many, many other threatened species. But I guess if we can't protect koalas, you know, which everybody loves, then what use are we in what we're doing here? There are several detection methods that are currently used. Strip transects, line transects, complete searches of small areas. So essentially walking in a line, people with binoculars. And don't get me wrong, these people are great. They're very, very good at finding koalas, and koalas are quite difficult to see out in the wild, deliberately so. As you may know, they don't run very fast. They tend to sit in one spot for a long time, and so potentially predators can get to them. So while those methods have been used for quite a while, they do cost a lot. Resource intensive essentially means that you have to pay people to go out and do those things. And while everybody says they love conservation, there's not a lot of money to do it. Even when we have experts out there, only 60 to 75% of koalas in an area are going to be observed. So if you think about that, for every 4 koalas in an area, we're only going to detect 3 of them. That's a huge error. So we have to think a little bit about what we can do better. Really, in an ideal world, what we do is cover large areas, including places where people can't go. We'd want to, there was a...
Sorry, that was me.
Okay. Can you go back one?
Yeah.
I can probably do it. All right. There we go.
Sorry.
We need to be cost effective. We need to get cheaper. We need to get rapid results. One of the issues, which is a kind of statistical issue that I won't go into too much, is around the probability of detection. You know, if a koala is hiding behind a branch, even though it's there, we're not going to see it. So when we count the number of koalas in an area, we need to, in some way, take account of the ones that we couldn't see. So how do we do that? Well, the title of the presentation will give you a clue. We use drones, and drones are great at covering large areas. Even then though, drones themselves aren't the entire answer. It's really about the sensors that drones carry. And they cost as much, if not more than the drones. And we can think about RGB sensors, which are straight up video, you know, either photo or video. Or, and what we found with koalas is thermal imagery. So looking for the heat signals really works well. And the reason it works well is because koalas live in a relatively complex environment. It's complex habitat. And so looking for a color in amongst that complex habitat is really hard. Looking for a thermal signal, it turns out, is much easier. This is what it looks like. This is, if you were to look at an area from around 60 meters above the ground, this is what it looks like in RGB. This is what it looks like in thermal, and that's better. And the question is, even now, where is the koala? Nobody's ever been able to spot it, and frankly, I can't either. But luckily, what we did was train machine learning algorithms to be able to detect the koalas. We were really lucky because we had an area where we had radio-collared koalas. And so what we could do is fly that area time and time again, looking at the thermal signals that were getting picked up by the drone sensors. But we also had ground-based imagery, so we knew what were the true positives and what was just noise that we had to ignore. So we could train the algorithms to do that. What we ended up with is something like this, where on the right-hand side, we train the algorithm to go through the thermal imagery, and the bright spots that you see on the right side are the high probability value areas, what the algorithm thinks is a koala. On the left-hand side, that is putting a bounding box, a blue bounding box around whatever gets over a certain probability. The algorithm has made the assumption that that's a koala. So as you can see, for us to be able to go through that thermal imagery would be exceptionally difficult. You can go slowly, you can go low, but if you do that, you're never going to cover enough area to be able, we can cover 50 hectares in just a couple of hours. And, you know, there's no way that humans can do that. We published this in a paper in 2019, which has attracted a lot of attention. Partly, it's probably attracted attention because it was about koalas. There's over, it's had a viewing audience of something like 300 million people around the world. It's been on the BBC. We've had a video done about our work by DJI, the drone company, Drones for Good. It's on YouTube if you want to look it up. But this has been a very influential paper, and it's led to subsequently, even in Australia, a lot of interest in how to further develop these kinds of techniques. And I mean, interestingly, we're still out the front in terms of developing these really advanced leading edge algorithms to use with drones to find things. What we subsequently did was think, well, it's useful to look for koalas, and we're continuing to do that. And we're continuing to do research about how we estimate abundance of koalas and how we do a number of different things with the drones. But of course, once you have a very difficult case study like that cracked, then the question is, how do you expand that? How do you make a greater impact with other species? Whether people think about it or not.
Just quickly, sorry.
Yeah.
If you can wrap up in about 1 minute, we've already started to get some questions. We'll definitely want to get to some of them. Sure. On some of the amazing things that you've already covered.
Okay, so in 1 minute, we moved on to other species, and we're doing it, we have done it with invasive deer as well. Now, the powerful thing, once again, is the artificial intelligence, the machine learning, and we're doing that with camera traps, not just with drones. So we're essentially doing it the same way, flying the drones, training the algorithms. And so I'll wrap it up there and take any questions that you have.